long as I can remember, having a third-party controller meant you weren't getting something as good as the OEM controllers. But over the past few years, I feel like that's changed. There are a lot of amazing options in terms of third-party controllers out there that you can get, such as the 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth controller, one of my favorite controllers and one that I've always recommended to a lot of people. But that has changed recently with the introduction of the Gulikit KK3 Max Controller. This has become one of my favorite controllers. But before we get into that, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We are trying to hit 750 subscribers by the end of the month, and the overall goal is by the end of March to hit 1,000 subscribers. So definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Also share the channel, that does help out a lot. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the KK3 Max Controller. So I've had this controller for about 2 weeks now, and I can honestly say that this is probably my favorite controller that I've ever used. The Gulikit KK3 Max Controller is a controller that feels very similar to an Xbox controller with some of the benefits of an Elite controller. It's shaped like an Xbox controller, has some back buttons, 4 of them that you can choose from, but there's also 2 extra different back paddles that you can go ahead and put on, which kind of are differently shaped. I've never used back paddles in that shape, but hey, I guess if you like that style, you have the option to do that. It does come with 4 extra face buttons that allows you to change the layout. By default, the layout of the face buttons are Nintendo Switch theme, but you can go ahead and change it to the Xbox layout, such as putting A at the bottom instead of having B at the bottom. It does have removable thumbsticks, though it doesn't come with any new thumbsticks to kind of replace. So if you do like longer thumbsticks, for example, you can definitely purchase them through Gulikit's website. I've seen them on AliExpress, and I believe they also have them on Amazon, where you can order a pack of, I want to say, 6 thumbsticks. So you can go ahead and swap them out, which is kind of cool as well. Like I mentioned earlier, the face buttons are removable to swap out, and through there you can kind of see what they're using. They're using mechanical buttons, though it looks like the newer versions will be a little bit different. I do have one of the first batches of the Gulikit KK3 Max controller, so I don't know what the newer batches are going to look like or what is really different about it. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if somebody can go ahead and open up a newer one and maybe do a comparison. Who knows, maybe I might buy a second one and do a comparison myself. At the top of the controller, you have your typical right trigger, left trigger, and your LB and RB button. But there is a little bit difference with the triggers. The triggers do allow you to go ahead and have 2 separate settings, such as one of them that gives you a hair trigger type feel, which is really good for Switch games that utilize digital triggers, because as you know, the Switch Pro controller and, well, the Switch in general just supports digital triggers, not really analog triggers. So you can go ahead and swap between basically having it feel like a digital trigger or an analog trigger that gives you more pull. So if you're playing on your PC, for example, you can go ahead and have that more analog feel versus having the digital feel. Though I know a lot of people that like a lot of shooting games, for example, prefer the digital feel. Also at the top is the ability to be able to swap what you want to connect to, which is actually really useful. For somebody like me that actually has a bunch of different devices that I want to connect this controller to, I can easily change by just double tapping on the button on the right side of the controller that will swap to the different inputs that I want to connect to. Such as there is a USB receiver that's in the box that you connect. I do have that connected to my PC, but when I want to use it with my Steam Deck, rather than take out that receiver and connect it to, let's say, my Steam Deck dock or something like that, I can go ahead and swap over to the Windows option that basically just allows it to connect using Bluetooth to the Steam Deck. And it works flawlessly. I've been using it on my Steam Deck playing Persona 3 Reload, haven't had any issues. I've also tried like Street Fighter 6 and a bunch of other games to see if there's any major latency, and me personally, I have not felt any differences between using Bluetooth or using the receiver. I also can go ahead and swap it out to my Switch just by pressing again and going to the Switch option. And like I said earlier, it works perfectly fine. It's actually amazing the way it feels there. Honestly, I do like that it saves all those connections, which is really good, because typically with a Bluetooth controller, you have to go ahead and go back and forth between those connections. You have to unpair the device, repair it to the next device, and back and forth. Where here, I can just double tap and go ahead and swap to all my devices at will, which is really good. Now there is an Android and iOS option. I personally have not used that. I haven't tried it, but I'm pretty sure it will work really good. I did have the Zen Pro controller before, and I have utilized the Bluetooth with that, and it worked perfectly fine. So I assume here it will work great. I don't know, maybe I'll put in a video right here of me playing like Resident Evil 4 on my iPad or something so you guys can see how it looks. Now, one of the major things that Gulikit is known for is pretty much not inventing, but adding Hall effect sensors to all their controllers, and also being able to create Hall effect sensors that are compatible with like the Steam Deck, for example, and the Nintendo Switch. And this controller has Hall effect sensors, which is really good. It gives a really nice thumbstick feel. Honestly, they're very precise, it's very fluid. I'm telling you, everything about this controller is great. It just feels great. When you go ahead and pick up an Xbox controller, use the thumbsticks there, and then you go back to the Gulikit controller, there is a night and day difference between the two. Honestly, even though the 8-bit Do Ultimate Bluetooth controller utilizes the Hall effect sensors, I do gotta say that I do feel that the Gulikit controller feels a little bit better. I mean, I'm not sure, it could be recency bias, but I've used them both, and I do feel that the Gulikit controller overall it's a lot smoother feel, feels a little bit more precise as well. The triggers are also Hall effect sensors, which in my previous review I did say the 8-bit Do Ultimate controller was, and it is not. So there, that does feel very smooth as well. Now, a major feature I do want to point out, especially for Nintendo Switch users, is that this controller will wake your Switch. The 8-bit Do Ultimate controller does also wake your Switch, but you have to shake the controller. In this case, you just go ahead and press the home button and it will wake your Switch, which is really nice because for whatever reason, I'll say 99% of the third-party controllers out there do not wake your Switch. I don't really understand why, but they don't. But in the case of the Gulikit KK3 Max Controller, it does wake your Switch, which is really cool. The other thing is it does support HD Rumble, another feature that a lot of third-party controllers don't support. The HD Rumble does feel very accurate, it feels exactly like it does on a Nintendo Switch, and there's also another rumble option. Gulikit has their own proprietary rumble motor feature, which is actually called the Gulikit Maglev Motor Vibration. I had to go ahead and look at my notes for that because that's a lot. But I've been using it with utilizing that, and man, I can tell you there is a big difference between utilizing that and utilizing the basic rumble features, or even the basic rumble features are available in something like, say, the 8-bit Do Ultimate Pro controller, or I'm sorry, the Ultimate Bluetooth controller, or the Xbox One controllers. There is quite a difference between the way that feels, and honestly, it feels pretty awesome. I've been playing it again on my PC, and it's just crazy the way it feels. We've been playing, like, for example, Stranger of Paradise, and the vibration was just going crazy. I mean, honestly, I love it. I love it. Everything about this controller seems very premium. So far, I have no issues. If you remember, like I mentioned earlier, I had the Zen Pro controller, and I did have issues with that, mainly the button sticking. So far, I have not had this issue, and I probably have more hours using this controller than I did with the Zen Pro controller before I got the little stickiness that controller had. And the D-pad, it's alright. I mean, I don't know. I've been using it, and maybe because it's new, it feels a little bit too stiff, in my opinion. So, like, again, playing Street Fighter, I really wanted to test the D-pad, and I don't know. I feel like the Xbox controller has a better D-pad compared to this. But there is a cool feature on the D-pad that you can go ahead and actually shut off the aid access on the D-pad. So you know how there's like a diagonal push and stuff like that. Well, you can actually shut that off. So if you're playing a game, let's say like Call of Duty, where it only really utilizes the four corners of the D-pad, you can go ahead and shut off the aid access, so it's only using the four, so you don't by mistake like press on something and it accidentally cycles through two different things and so forth. That is a cool feature, I guess, if you utilize that. I mean, me personally, I don't see any way of me using that feature, but I guess if that does bother you, if you have like accidental presses or anything like that, then yeah, you can go ahead and activate that. Now, one of the other famous features that Gulikit is known for is their Autopilot feature. What Autopilot is basically what it sounds like. It allows the game to kind of play itself, but the way you set it up is kind of different than just like Autopilot, right? What you have to do is go ahead and configure it. So for example, a good example that I like to use is, let's say you're playing a game where you have to do the same routine over and over again. What you can do is do that routine in autopilot mode, and what it will do is save that to its memory, because the controller actually has memory on board. And whenever you hit the autopilot button, it'll go ahead and just replicate that same feature. So maybe you're playing like a farming game and you have to go through and water the plants constantly over and over. Well, if you just press that button, it'll go through and farm or water the plants for you. You don't have to constantly go ahead and do it individually all the time, which is kind of cool, I guess, if you're playing games there's just a lot of repetitiveness to it, where you're doing the same thing over and over again. I guess it's a neat feature. I personally never use it, never really had the need to use it, but there is an option. It does also support turbo mode and stuff like that. You know, turbo mode for me, I guess the only time I'm really ever using it is like when I replay Final Fantasy VIII, because if you're trying to do the GF boost and maximize it, yeah, you gotta use turbo mode. So that's the only time I would ever use turbo mode, but hey, it's there. So if you want to play Final Fantasy VIII and use the GF boost, there's that option there as well. And one of the last major features that I feel that a lot of controllers don't always have, but some of them do, is gyro. Gyro is supported on both Nintendo Switch and on PC. So if you want to utilize the gyro on PC, which maybe you might prefer that over just aiming with your right thumbstick. I know some people say it's a lot quicker than using the thumbstick. Me personally, I've never got into gyro. I couldn't really get into it aiming. If anything, it just throws it off for me. It does give you that option though, so you can enable gyro on both your PC gaming and the Nintendo Switch and utilize the gyro functions on here, which is actually a pretty cool feature for people who want to utilize games that, you know, or not even utilize games that utilize gyro. You can go ahead and activate gyro on something like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 and utilize motion sensing versus the right thumbstick, which is kind of cool. And I did want to mention one last major feature, and that's something that improves the controller overall, and that is having RGB. No, I'm just kidding. But RGB is on the thumbstick. You can shut it off, and there's two different, I guess, options for it. There is like a low light, there's the regular lighting, which is what it's at right now, and then there's just the off version. It's not really RGB, it's really just B, because the light's only blue, and I guess there's white. It turns white as well when you turn it on, but other than that, there's no other colors you can configure it to, which I guess, you know, kind of sucks. If you want to change the color, you don't have the option, but it's there. Another thing I did want to mention that I didn't mention earlier is the ring around the thumbsticks are actually metal, which makes it glide, and that's one of my favorite features about this controller. One reason I loved the Zen Pro controller is because that metal ring, it just feels very, very premium. The whole build of this controller is very premium. When you hold it in your hand, it is a little bit heavier, but almost everything is made out of metal. The back buttons are made out of metal, the ring here is metal. Like, the plastic on the controller feels very, very solid. Like, it's not a cheap plastic, it's a really good plastic. I'm sure the vibration motors that I mentioned earlier are probably also, well, I mean, they are made out of metal, of course, but they're probably big and heavy, which is another reason why this weighs a lot. But the weight doesn't really bother me. Like, it feels good in my hands. Holding it on the back, like, I never by mistake press the back buttons, and I keep the back buttons on at all times. If you want to, you can remove the back buttons. I just personally don't, because I would set, let's say, like G2 and G4, which are these. You can set them for like your right thumbstick pressing or your left thumbstick pressing, which comes in handy, right? So a lot about this controller I really do like. The build quality is amazing. I haven't seen a controller that was built like this in a while. I guess the Elite controller is the closest you get to that. I have played around with and like touched the DualSense Edge controller, and yeah, it's all right, but I still think this outbeats that in terms of like quality. It feels really, really good in my hand. I mean, honestly, yeah, like, I don't think there's a controller better than this. So yeah, I honestly think that the KK3 Max controller is my favorite controller. I've been able to utilize it on multiple platforms. I love that feature, just the feel of it, everything about it's great. I guess I should really quick mention battery life. It says it's about 20 hours of battery life. I mean, I guess I'm getting around 20 hours of battery life. It's a little bit longer if you shut off the RGB. I think it goes up, like, almost doubles, but I mean, I'm fine with 20 hours of battery life. I've utilized it on my streams, and each of my streams are 3 hours long. Plus, when I'm not streaming, I'll utilize it on my own. So yeah, it kind of equals about 20 hours. I keep the RGB on just because I don't feel like shutting it off. The way you actually shut it off is you press, there's a settings button in the middle, and you press that, and then the D-pad has a bunch of different options, I guess you could say. So you press the setting button and press the D-pad left, I believe it's the light. If you press the setting button, press the D-pad down, I think that's the vibration motors and so forth. There's basically a set of instructions that you want to kind of keep next to you, unless you're really good and have a good memory, and I don't have that. but there's an instruction manual that's inside the box you want to keep with you. If not, you can go to Gulikit's website. They have a manual that's on there that you can print out or save it as a PDF on your computer and just kind of have that quickly accessible as well. But other than that, like, the controller's great. I guess the only one negative is there is really no like software for it. So there isn't like the 8-bit do Ultimate has like software. There's the 8-bit do software that allows you kind of to customize the controller in any way you kind of see what's going on. This doesn't have that. Everything is on the controller itself, so you have to kind of hope you're doing the right thing. I guess on the good side is there is a reset button. So let's say your macros are all over the place, your back buttons are set up wrong, and everything just feels crazy and you want to just kind of have a fresh start. You can factory reset the controller just so that it has its factory set buttons, which is kind of neat, you know, especially for somebody who plays around with it a lot. That might be very, very useful. But other than that, controller is amazing. That's the only thing I would say it's the only negative, and it's just that I wish there was software on there that allowed me to go ahead and update the firmware, for example, or just see what's going on with my controller, because unfortunately there's no other way around that. But let me know what you think about the KK3 Max controller. Honestly, like I said, one of my favorite controllers, if not my favorite controller. Actually, no, it is my favorite controller right now. Just feels solid. Love everything about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Like I mentioned earlier, we are trying to hit 750 subscribers by the end of this month, and by the end of March, hopefully we hit 1,000 subscribers. Share the channel, that does help out quite a lot. Like I mentioned earlier as well, we do stream typically about 2 days a week, every Thursday and Friday, and then Sunday we have the Random Encounter podcast, where we just discuss everything going on in the gaming world. My name is James, and I'll catch you guys next time.